Good morning, everybody. This is Steve Fletcher with the Trumpet for My People. Today is May 12th, 2019. I wanted to share something with you from a comment that was sent to me on my latest YouTube video. And it's coming from the book of Jubilees. Before I read part of chapter 3 in the book of Jubilees, I wanted to share with you a description of this book. The book of Jubilees, sometimes called Lesser Genesis, is an ancient Jewish religious work of 50 chapters considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, as well as Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jews, where it is known as the Book of Division. So it's a non-canonical, apocryphal book, a book of history that the Jewish church in Ethiopia from ancient times considered part of the true canon. So it's just history, and it was not included in the 66 books of our Bible, but many people believe that there are a number of books that should have been included that were not. And for one reason or another, the book of Jubilees was not included. But there's an interesting piece of information that I wanted to share with you from Jubilees chapter 3, and let's take a look at that. Okay, Book of Jubilees, you can search online and get this. Just search Book of Jubilees. You'll find the link to find this book and be able to read it for yourself. And in chapter 3, and let's read from the beginning. We're going to find something down, I think, in about verse 8 or something. But let's read from the beginning and see what it says. On the 6 days of the second week, we brought, according to the word of God, unto Adam all the beasts, and all the cattle, and all the birds, and everything that moves on the earth, and everything that moves in the water, according to their kinds, and according to their types. The beasts on the first day, the cattle on the second day, the birds on the third day, and all that which moves on the earth on the fourth day, and that which moves in the water on the fifth day. And Adam named them all by their respective names, and as he called them, so was their name. And on these 5 days Adam saw all these, male and female, according to every kind that was on the earth, but he was alone and found no helpmeet for him. And the Lord said unto us, It is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helpmeet for him. And the Lord our God caused a deep sleep to fall upon him, and he slept. He took for the woman one rib from amongst his ribs, and this rib was the origin of the woman from amongst his ribs. And he built up the flesh in its stead, and built the woman. And he awaked Adam out of his sleep, and on awaking he rose on the sixth day, and he brought him to her, and he knew her, and he said unto her, This is now bone of my bone, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called my wife, because she was taken from her husband. Therefore shall man and wife be one, and therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. In the first week was Adam created, and the rib his wife. In the second week he showed her unto him, and for this reason the commandment was given to keep in their defilement for a male 7 days, and a female twice 7 days. Well, that's interesting. What we read yesterday, this isn't what I wanted to share with you, but I'm just seeing this now. Maybe part of the reason what we saw yesterday in 2 Chronicles 30, where it says they celebrated second Passover for 14 days. That is quite interesting, the connection here. For a male 7 days, and a female twice 7 days. Second Passover may be connected to the female, and that is why they celebrated second Passover twice 7 days, which we see in Chronicles, okay? And that's what we shared yesterday. So that'll be the first link I share with you, what I shared yesterday about do not forget second Passover. And after Adam had completed 40 days in the land, where he had been created. We brought him into the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it, but his wife they brought in on the 80th day, and after this she entered into the Garden of Eden. And for this reason the commandment is written on the heavenly tablets, in regard to her that gives birth, if she bears a male, she shall remain in her uncleanness 7 days according to the first week of days, and 33 days she shall remain in the blood of her purifying, and she shall not touch any hallowed thing, nor enter into the sanctuary, until she accomplishes these days, which are enjoined in the case of a male child. But in the case of a female child, she shall remain in her uncleanness 2 weeks of days, according to the first 2 weeks, and 60 days in her blood of her purification, and they will be in all 80 days. Okay, all of this that we just read is in Leviticus chapter 12. Leviticus chapter 12. Okay. I was getting confused here because this shows verse 1, but it's actually 11. This is 10, this is 9, 10, 11. It's just not coming up on the on my screen here. Okay. So we read through verse 11. And when she had completed these 80 days, we brought her into the Garden of Eden, for it is holier than all the earth besides, and every tree that is planted in it is holy. Therefore there was ordained regarding her who bears a male or a female child the statute of those days, that she should touch no hallowed thing, nor enter the sanctuary until these days, for the male or female child are accomplished. This is how the law and testimony which was written down for Israel, in order that they should observe it all the days. And in the first week of the first Jubilee, Adam and his wife were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and keeping it. And we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. Okay, before I continue reading on here, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that everything up to here is basically what it says in Genesis. There are some details added, but we don't really see any contradictions. There's a conjunction with this creation story and how it connects to the law of Leviticus. But other than that, we don't see any contradictions, in my opinion. So anyway, let's continue reading on. It says, in the first week of the first Jubilee, Adam and his wife were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and keeping it, and we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. And he tilled the garden and was naked and knew it not, and was not ashamed, and he protected the garden from the birds and beasts and cattle, and gathered its fruit and eat, and put aside the residue for himself and his wife, and put aside that which was being kept. And after the completion of the 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly at 8 a.m., so we don't see in the book of Genesis how long they were in the garden until the fall. But this is giving a timeline from creation to the fall. And it says, after the completion of the 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman, and the serpent said to the woman, hath God commanded you, saying, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? So here we see that the serpent came and tempted the woman. The fall of man happened on this day. And this is 7 years after creation. It says they lived 7 years in the garden, and it was after 7 years, according to Jubilees chapter 3, after 7 years, it was on the 17th day of the second month that the serpent came and tempted man, tempted the female. She tempted the female. It was the female who fell on the 17th day of the second month. And it was Iyar 17, the 17th day of the second month. This is everything we have been watching about the flood, about second Passover, about the end of the fig tree generation, On May 14th and 7 days later on Iyar 17, May 21st, May 22nd, 2019, Iyar 17 is what we have been watching. And here in Jubilees chapter 3, it says, after the completion of the 7 years which had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman. The serpent said to the woman, hath God commanded you, saying, ye shall not eat of every tree in the garden? So here we have an added piece of information. We already have the information about the flood. We already have the information about second Passover. But here, if we have the fall of man on the 17th day of the second month, we have the flood on the 17th day of the second month, and then we have the final judgment of man and the beginning of the great tribulation on the 17th day of the second month. And this is also the day of second Passover, which is second Passover Resurrection Day. So for those who have been cleansed, for those who have been born again, for those who are not in the flesh of this world, there is deliverance. But for everyone who remains in sin, for everyone who remains in the flesh of this world, this is a day set aside for judgment. From the fall of man to the flood, to the Great Tribulation, and it's the second Passover Resurrection Day. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share with you. There were added details here when I read this about the 14 days connected to the woman, and that makes sense. And that also makes sense with what we read yesterday in 2 Chronicles chapter 30, where it says they celebrated second Passover for 14 days. Okay, I don't think that is going to affect what we're watching. The second Passover 14-day feast is connected to the female child, which has a 14-day purification time and 66 days connected to 80 days, and so it's the number of the beast. And here we have the beast coming on the 17th day of the second month to tempt the woman. It's the fall. It's the day of the fall of mankind. And if this is true, and I see the validity in this, the power of this, being that it is most likely true that on the 17th day of the second month, maybe the reason why this book was left out of Scripture, because they didn't want us to know this important detail, the connection between the fall of man, the great flood, second Passover Resurrection Day, and now leading us to the beginning of the Great Tribulation on May 22nd, 2019, 7 days after the end of the fig tree generation. So I just wanted to share this with you. I think this is a wonderful piece of information, and I could not keep this to myself. So you can go ahead and search for yourself the book of Jubilees and see what it says. I pray you're blessed today. This is Steve Fletcher with the Trumpet for My People, the sign of his coming revealed.